Good morning. It's Wednesday, March 6th, and today I want to discuss the greatness of the United States, because I don't think the United States is the greatest country in the world anymore. But there are many people who do believe that, and there are many reasons why I don't consider us the greatest country in the world. Because when I look at certain factors, it's apparent to me that other countries are doing these things better than us. And I ran through a list of 20 items that suggested why we were not the greatest country in the world. But some of those items that they had on this list I don't necessarily agree with. And then some of the items that I consider very important weren't on that list. So that's a problem, because thinking of who's the greatest and what makes the greatest is not easy. There are so many factors to consider. I would consider one thing that puts a big black mark on our position in the world is the gun violence that goes on a regular basis. That almost every day there's a mass shooting of some kind. And the definition of a mass shooting is 4 people killed in one location. And every day there's gun violence in this country. And that's a big black mark in my mind, that we have so many people with guns who have uncontrollable desires to kill people. So one could say, yeah, that's a small segment of society. But it's thousands of people, 40, 50,000 people a year killed by guns. And that's not counting the suicides. So that's a big black mark. And another big black mark on us is the healthcare costs. Healthcare costs in the United States are the highest in the whole world, right? Even though they only measure that against 48 countries or something, we have the highest medical care costs in the world. Why? Why is that the case? And we don't have as many doctors as we could have. In fact, doctors are not being produced at a fast enough rate for us. General practitioners and people like that are not being produced so fast anymore. Because in reality, being a doctor in the United States, even though healthcare costs are very high, being a doctor in the United States is not the easiest job in the world. It probably takes around 12 years before you really can go out and practice. And that's an expensive proposition. Even though we did have a monumental donation to the cause, the Albert Einstein College of Medicine will now be tuition-free for all students. Because Ruth Gottesman worked at that institution starting in sometime around 1968. And she developed some important tools in her life there. Tools that allowed them to screen children for learning problems. And she launched an adult literacy program. And she was fortunate enough that her husband worked with Warren Buffett and had made investment with Warren Buffett. And so she had this $1 billion that she could give to the Einstein School of Medicine. Wonderful, wonderful event. But I'm sorry to say that we don't have events like that too often. And in our society, those who can afford to give huge chunks of money usually give it to the cause for electing some politician that they can keep in their pocket. That's a major failing in this country, the way that we elect people, the way that people run for office, the amount of money that's spent on advertising in the newspapers and on TV is astronomical. And I believe that that's a huge problem in this country. What we should be doing is putting a count on the time that you can run for office. Say election cycles are 3 months long. Let us also say that nobody can spend more than $5 million to get reelected or elected or at all. That's a major problem in this country, the amount of money that we piss away electing people and then controlling them so that they can do the least amount of good for the rest of society. So our political system, in my mind, is a failure. Not because it's not democratic, but because of the cost of becoming a worthwhile congressman or senator or even president. Think of the billions of dollars that is pissed away to elect, for the most part, a poor group to run this country. Compromise has disappeared in our governing body, and so we are going downhill very quickly. So when you look at some other critical things that decide the greatness of our country, take life expectancy, for instance. Our life expectancy is not the best in the world. It's down, probably at the low level for an industrial giant, for a country that has the economic power that we have. Our life expectancy is pretty poor. It's poor probably because of the cost of medical care in this country and student math performance. We're nowhere near the top of the world in that, and that's a critical sign of our educational system, which, while it is great in certain places, it's terrible in other parts of the country. And that is reflected by the number of doctorates per capita. We are not in the top there either. So we're doing well, but not great. And we will survive, I am sure, but there's a lot of work to be done to make us much better. Infant mortality is high for a country in our situation. But if you look at the poverty levels that we have, 50 million people at the poverty level, you can expect that there is a problem with the infant birth mortality. So, if you want to find out where we really stand, get online and look up the situation. Look for the greatest country in anything that you want. And you will find that the only thing that we lead in is healthcare costs. And why should drugs in our country cost twice as much as they cost in Canada? The same drug from the same company costs twice as much in the United States. And that's a shanda. Why should our costs for healthcare be more expensive than any place else in the world? It's a great question, but I don't have time to answer that. But there are many factors. The competitive situation within the drug industry, the fact that there are so many different forms of insurance out there. In many countries, there's a single insurer, but we don't have that. We have a competitive environment, and that leads us to outrageous healthcare costs. So I leave you with that. Do a little research, and maybe you'll understand the problem better. Have a great day. Bye.